In volleyball, the rally is always a chain. One action grows out of another. That's why our breakdown of volleyball skills now has to take a different shape. It's no longer just about 2 consecutive actions, but about what links them, the often overlooked movement between. And we'll start with attacking after serve reception.
Attacking after reception requires a change in the approach run, which usually begins inside the court. The reality, though, is that outside hitters love to approach from outside the sideline, so they often try to get there, even if reception forces them inside. Reception almost always happens inside the court, and from there the hitter begins the approach, following a path that's more or less curved, but always leading to the attack point. Training follows the same logic. We try to model situations just as they unfold in real matches. At first glance, it looks simple, because young players often have this sequence already coded into their movements almost automatically. But the beginnings are tough. Beginners see reception and attack as 2 separate things. That's why it's crucial to drill the connecting piece, the smooth transition from the reception spot to the start of the approach. We use different preparatory forms for this, whether with an overball or a regular volleyball.
Of course, this can't always be scripted. There will always be situations where there's neither time nor space for a nice rounded approach.
When that happens, players must find whatever solution the situation allows. Like here, when Czech national team player Licek is pushed all the way to mid-court and even has to receive while kneeling. In that case, he sprints the shortest path possible to the attack point and only rotates his left side toward the net in the final 2 steps.
And that's the beauty of volleyball. Nothing runs strictly by the book. Our job is to prepare players for every possible version of the game, so nothing surprises them once they're on court. That's why a straight line approach starting from inside the court is still a foundation every young hitter must master. Here's a demonstration by this young volleyball player. If she has enough time after the reception, she moves outside the court and builds a full approach. If not, she has to choose a shorter, less favorable path and rotate her left hip toward the net only at the end, yet still finish the attack successfully. But this doesn't look right. The kid is dragging himself forward like in slow motion. In volleyball, we want lively, explosive movement, don't we?
Exactly right. But you have to remember, these are kids. Sometimes they try to take the easy way, sometimes they genuinely give effort. But then the play surprises them and the unusual situation forces an error, like here, where the approach ends up with the wrong step sequence under pressure.
But with consistent focus, practicing under tougher conditions, and coaches who stay disciplined, the kids will eventually get it. The movements they're searching for now will become automatic over time. Now let's take it a step further. Everything we've said about attacking after a forearm pass also applies to attacking after an overhead pass, trajectory still leading from inside the court. Let's quickly recall what the final steps of the approach should look like, and then we move on to other situations. For example, when reception isn't perfect, the setter chases the ball across the court, and the hitter has to adjust both their starting position and their response to a set that often isn't perfectly placed.
Attacking after one's own reception, of course, doesn't happen only from Zone 4. It can also come from Zone 6, as the so-called pipe attack, something we often see from the Americans. But after reception, it's not only other players who attack, right?
Exactly. Middle blockers must also step in to help when the team has to deal with a short reception. And that naturally shows up in training, as we see with Czech national team middles like Zajíček and Klimesh. And of course, it's true in women's volleyball as well. Bottom line, attacking after reception is a task that applies to every player regardless of position. And today, even opposite hitters aren't an exception. Take our old friend from last episode, Georg Grozer. Their traditional domain was always the attack, but modern volleyball demands more. They're now part of the serve-receive formation and must master the sequence of attacking after their own reception, something they never used to do.
But that's not all. There are a few closely related scenarios worth mentioning. The first is when a player makes the reception but doesn't attack afterward. Even then, they still have to make themselves available for the attack, even with no guarantee of getting the set. They're part of the offensive system. So consistency here matters, even if the ball never comes their way. The second is the opposite case, but equally important. A player stands in the reception formation, ready to pass, but the ball goes to a teammate. They must still stay focused, taking preparation steps, sometimes even starting toward the ball, even though they don't touch it. This movement eats up time and affects their following approach. It's essentially an attack after a reception-related movement, even though they never actually received.
Every action in the game influences the next, even mistakes. A foot fault on the 3-meter line, for example, may result from the mental focus on reception stealing time and rhythm from the approach. The whole point of this episode is to underline one thing. What happens before always affects what comes after, both the execution and the success of the next skill. Today we've shown how reception and attack link together from one player's perspective. But in real games, rallies rarely end after a single attack. Individual sequences can take countless forms and stretch into long chains of actions. And that's exactly what we'll continue to explore in the upcoming episodes.